people from choosing to live there in the first place. As of last week, there were only 4 tents at the Oasis camp. That means many people in Burien remain without shelter. If the council decides to host a village, one possible provider is the Low Income Housing Institute, LIHI. LIHI sent an email proposal to the Burien City Council on November 19th, including their code of conduct, which states in part, no alcohol or drugs, including marijuana, are allowed in any public spaces within the shelter property or the surrounding neighborhood. Well, this leaves me with a few questions. Does this mean they can use drugs and alcohol in their private tiny home instead, just not in the public areas? And who gets to live there? Will families with children be welcome? What about low barriers? There are conflicting views surrounding this concept. For many people, logic states high barrier code conduct makes sense. But according to Nigel Herbig from King County Regional Homelessness Authority, lower barriers with supportive services will lead to increased shelter utilization and community safety. Should Burien accept King County's offer and host a village, will it have the same problem as Oasis, a location with few takers? And if local campers decline, who will fill the village then? Regardless of tonight's decision, it's important that the city implement and enforce its no camping ban. Otherwise, what would incentivize a homeless individual to choose a shelter with rules and code of conduct when they could simply live on the street without rules? I believe the best solution is to connect the Burien homeless with the medical, mental health, and detox services they need in Seattle, which has far more resources.
Next is Finn Howell.
Good evening. For me, the issue unresolved last week was that it was unclear what the land lease would cost to place in Boulevard Park. Has this question been resolved? Do you have any idea what the cost for this will be? The same issue is true for the Kennedy Catholic High site. Will Seattle City Light just let Burien take it for free? The objection to placing people who are in fact drug users next to a high school was a valid concern. Ms. Cindy Moore dismissed this as an invalid because kids will be kids. In other words, they could buy drugs anywhere, so this is really no additional risk. The Burien City Council assures us no strings are attached, but the King County Regional Housing Authority says that the goal is low barriers to entry. These are conflicting statements and yet another unanswered question. How do you on the council even know what you're agreeing to? By the way, surprise, surprise, the whole truth wasn't made known to even you until a few days ago. Nobody in this room philosophically opposes the idea of providing real shelter to the homeless. These sheds that do not have plumbing is no place for children, families, or the mentally ill. The DESC apartment is a far better and more humane approach. I know King County is largely funding the costs, but just put the money into that and finish the project.
Next is Jennifer Pachamba on Zoom. Jennifer, would you please unmute yourself?
Thank you so much. Good evening, Council. Well, here we are in the 11th hour. There is not much more to say other than pick a parcel of land and take the offer. This offer from King County has been on the table since late May, and up until last week, you really hadn't had a discussion about it. Both Lehigh and Sound have offered support, and the only thing missing is you all taking King County's offer by voting yes. Stand on the side of compassion and humanity and accept the King County offer tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Vicki Hartley.
This is your last opportunity to do the right thing. The Boulevard Park site is unsuitable for numerous reasons: noise and air pollution, aquifer reclamation site, poor lighting, food desert, not room for a fire lane, and many more. But I shouldn't have to go through this list again. It has been presented to you multiple ways and times. You are being inhumane by categorizing people who don't have a home as being all alike. The causes of homelessness have also been presented to you in multiple ways and times. All we have gotten out of this is that 4 out of 7 of you lack credibility and value dollar over human beings. Let's quickly end this tonight and utilize the City Light property. And as far as the code of conduct discussion, that is a waste of time. KCRHA will choose the provider, and every provider has tried and proven codes of conduct. Leave it to the professionals.
Next is Stephen Lampier on Zoom. Stephen, would you please unmute yourself? Oh, sorry, hang on. Stephen, would you please try now?
Good evening, council members. We know that $1 million will probably not go very far and certainly won't solve the unhoused crisis that we've created. However, $1 million will go further toward helping people than $0 ever will, provided, of course, that the council actually has an intention of helping people. Even 6 months would be a huge benefit to the people who are living in tents currently. Choose a location and take the deal. Please help these people now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Sybil Davis.
Good evening. First, I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here. And I'm really happy to see everybody and people on Zoom and people in the community obviously really care and are very engaged. I want to thank you for all your time and hard work. And City Manager Bayoma, I want to thank you specifically for when you first came here, you were very, very supportive of the arts, and we really appreciate that. So I'm appreciative of you. I have 3 simple asks. Number 1, accept the money from the city and the 35 pallet and shelters. Number 2, appoint a task force of city officials, people experienced with homeless and housing, community members from your smart, caring community, and grant writers. Number 3, act now. Don't wait. A site can be determined later. Burien can set a national example, and we're caring, we're capable, we're smart, and we can solve this complex problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Patricia Hudson.
Good evening. As elected officials, I look to you and City Council to make the hard decisions, the decisions that are reflective of all within our community, not just a few. Tonight, you have that opportunity to finally make a decision and accept the funds from King County to build a pallet home village for our unhoused with a site that will allow our neighbors to receive the services they so desperately need. Please make the right fiscally responsible decision and accept the money and reallocate funds to be used to remove stairs to save lives. I implore you to please accept the funds from King County, work with KCRHA to select the location and partner and meet the needs of the unhoused. Time has run out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ken Gallersred on Zoom. Ken, would you please unmute yourself?
Thank you. Good evening, council and fellow Burienites. My opinion is the city of Burien should accept the $1 million grant from King County for the unhoused. The Boulevard Park option is too far from services to be a viable site. I am in favor of either the city light site on 136 or the site that's currently being used by Burien Toyota. Lehigh should run the program with tiny homes. They have a proven record with the villages. And please let Oasis Church be and let them house whomever they choose. The council this fall passed the no camping ordinance as a concession to those who want the unhoused people out of Burien. For those of us that want to support those unhoused, that do want assistance, let us have this chance to have this option of a tiny home village. 2 years ago, the council passed to allow DESC to, build their building. And look at it right now. Today I saw the shell is almost near completion of the building. And I'm hoping in 24, it will be opened. And what if we were to make that decision today? Would we would you make the same right move as you did then? I hope so. So please be compassionate towards the unhoused. Don't incarcerate them and get them further involved with the criminal justice system. Tiny homes is not an encampment. It has a fence, security, and services. Churches and nonprofits cannot fill all of this need. Let us help those who want help. We are all part of this problem, and we are all part of the solution. Thank you for taking my comment.
Next is Linda Stryker.
Linda Stryker, Seahurst, Gregory Heights area. I believe the homelessness situation has been presented in a garbled and confusing way, perhaps purposely, but making an apples to apples evaluation very confusing. In addition, interchanging terms such as tent encampment and tiny home village, pallet homes versus tiny homes, is also very confusing to the public. I support a sanctioned tiny home village on the Seattle City Light property that is staffed, fenced, and secure, and a step toward permanent housing. I have visited 3 such villages and know their success, and my kids went to Kennedy. If a citizen were in the water drowning, I would not spend 6 months searching for the perfect life raft, but would toss any kind of flotation device for him to grab and survive. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Thank you.
Next is Charlotte Staxel. Charlotte? Okay, next is Beth. Oh. Thank you.
I'm really nervous about being up here, but I don't have no sheet of paper. I don't have much to say because I have so much to say. I take care of the housing, the encampment on the Y on Ambom. I have a son that's been on the street since he was 14 years old by choice, not because he had a bad living situation. But I have moved them 3 times. And unless you've walked them and you've met them, you have no right to judge them. I believe everybody has the right to have a down in their life, but these are people. Burien is one of them. I've been in many camps, and Burien is one of these encampments that want change, but nobody comes. Yes, they're all addicts, but they're still human. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, if you're black or white or red. If you're human, then you would see that they are humans and they should be treated as humans because they do have the rights and they do matter. And if I haven't done anything for anybody and I've raked a lot of leaves and cleaned up a lot of trash, I've done it because they matter, not just one, not just my son. Every single person matters to me. And I wish that was just an easy choice. I don't think you should be judging them. Nobody has that right, and neither do I, just because they're drug addicts or they all want to be somebody better than what they are, and they all deserve that chance, and they're all willing. It's just that people have to give them more of a hand to show them that they matter, and it's not really there, but they do matter to me, and I'll be there till the end. Thank you.
Next is Beth Hale. Beth Hale. Thank you. Next is Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard. Okay, next is Butch Henderson.
Again, Butch Henderson from Boulevard Park. My wife and I have lived there for over 27 years. Last Monday, I presented you with a list of homeowners in Boulevard Park who had signed a petition asking that you not cite this homeless camp in Boulevard Park. Tonight, I just want to, as majority rules, I just want to make a quick survey, and everyone here that's in favor of putting that Homeless Park and Boulevard Park, please raise your hand. Everybody against putting in Boulevard Park, please raise their hand. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Next is Darla.
Hello, Council. I'm here again to reiterate that it should be, and I do say should be, a unanimous decision to reject the $1 million bribe to deposit a problem into Burien that we did not create. This is a problem based on bad decisions and poor policy. And this wasn't created overnight. This is a 20-year in the making problem. If a housing first model worked, it would have worked in 2018. It would have worked in 2005 when Nicholsville was created. Make no mistake, because we see you, this is a bribe. $1 million will not cover what Burien needs to do in order to create a sanctioned or unsanctioned encampment. We will be on the hook. It will never go away. Mary's Place is expanding, and thanks to this council and the previous one, we now have a DESC going in our downtown core. How's that going to work out for us? If you pass this, it is you that will have to face us in our neighborhoods. Do not bow to the bullies who don't even live in Burien, who are pushing this on us. Have courage. The answer should be no. No tent cities, anywhere, anytime in Burien will be successful. Thank you.
Next is Carol Lum.
Good evening, Carol Lum. I've lived here for 18 years, and I have to say that this is probably the thorniest issue I've seen the city grapple with. I would like to say I'm not here to bully you, but I do expect my city council to take on the hard decision and please accept the money from King County, accept the pallet homes. I was, unfortunately, I was not online watching your meeting last week, so I'm not familiar with either of the sites you're looking at. Every time I go by the Toyota site or the property that city owns that is leased by the Toyota, it's hardly ever full. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen it full. But certainly recently, there have been very few cars that are stored there. It's close to transit, it's close to grocery stores. We are part of a larger region. Every city in this and the county needs to do its bit to meet the needs of those who are less fortunate than us. You've heard a lot of people talk about addiction and once you get people housed even in a small way, that provides an opportunity for services to be provided. So I would really urge you as city council members to make a decision tonight to take a positive step in meeting the needs of the less fortunate in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is John Grant.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is John Grant. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for the Low Income Housing Institute. Thank you so much for setting up another time to talk about this issue. I really appreciate it. I know the community does too. I want to paint a picture for you. A lot of questions have come up about what does it mean to have a tiny house village? We operate 18 of them, as far north as Bellingham, as far south as Olympia, and they're pretty great. We have case management on site, 24/7 staffing. We have at many of our sites behavioral health specialists. So if you have a substance use disorder, you actually get connected to treatment. And I've noticed that a lot of folks are talking about this issue as if it doesn't already exist. It's something that's been imported to Burien. Whatever the genesis of it was, it's here now. So what are we going to do about it? We have a model that we shared with you, a code of conduct, a management plan that has been successful in Skyway, Tacoma, Bellingham, Seattle, Tukwila. We think it can work here. And in my, 50 seconds I have left, I just, want you to imagine what it would look like. I've now come down and testified a number of times. There's a gentleman who sleeps outside the library. He's been there almost every time I've been down here. But what would it look like if, you could call Colleen up in the Human Services Department and say, hey, Colleen, can you reach out to that gentleman and give him a referral to the village that we opened? And he could get shelter. He could talk to a case manager, maybe for the first time in his life. He could get connected to treatment services if that's what they need. That's a pretty great place to live. And it's a great resource for the community. And when these sites are managed well, community members come around and they support them too. And I hear everyone's concerns, but it is truly an asset to the community. And I urge you to take action tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Colleen Hinton on Zoom. Colleen, would you please unmute yourself at this time?
Good evening, council members. I want to thank you also for all coming to a special meeting on this all-important topic, one that has been pretty significant for Burien and that is so important for the people that are experiencing the situation that they find themselves in. You've heard my public comments and heard from me via email many times. You know my thoughts on this matter. I don't think it makes any sense whatsoever to refuse $1 million to move forward with establishing a temporary tiny village with rules such as those run by the Low Income Housing Institute. The very fact that it is temporary means that it won't need to be funded forever. Even if we only end up using the $1 million and getting absolutely nothing more, that will be several months of stability for people with zero housing stability right now, which could well propel them to what we all want for them, permanent housing and the services they need for health and stability. I implore you to accept the money and choose a site. The Boulevard Park site by far has the most downsides. The city-owned lot on 152nd by far has the most upsides. The Seattle City Light site would be an acceptable compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Stan Milston.
Good evening, Stan Milstead from Boulevard Park, a 45-year resident. I've been to a couple meetings now, watched you on TV a few times, really dismayed at the lack of action. You've had 6 months or so to decide a site, and here we are just barely over 4 hours from a deadline because you can't find out how much the properties will cost. Last meeting, the owner of the Boulevard property was sitting in the back of the room laughing at you. City Light, I think they've made offers. I don't know the facts, but I think there's been several things talked about that. Boulevard Park, you can see the response, you can hear the response. Mayor Sophia, listen to the people. You're the leader of the council, you're the leader of the city. Listen to the people. They don't want it in Boulevard Park. There's good reasons. We want it somewhere. We can't put the homeless out on the street any longer. It's not Seattle's fault. It's not Tacoma's fault. It's not Portland's fault. It's a national problem that we have with homeless. It's in our lap now. We need to take responsible steps and take care of it. Stephanie, if you don't believe that our money should be spent on the homeless, they're part of the city. You are elected to take care of people in the city. You have constituents. Some of those might be homeless. Jimmy Mata, if you don't want to vote for anything, if you're abstaining, fine. Why are you even here? Sydney Moore, great job. Hugo, great job. Kevin, if you're not going to recuse yourself from this vote because
Excuse
of,
me, sir,
yes,
please direct the comments to the council as a whole and not to individual members.
Certainly.
Thank you.
may I have my seconds back, please? The council, if somebody is on the council that's getting a large political donation from one of the site renters, they should recuse themselves. That's all I have to say. Just make a decision.
Next is Kate Richardson on Zoom. Kate, would you please unmute yourself?
Hi, this is Kate Richardson from Gregory Heights, 36 years in Burien. It may get down to 29 degrees tonight, maybe 30 tomorrow. In a couple of days, the rains may be back, and with them the wind. Don't leave so many people out in the cold. Do relieve some pressure from our police. Do relieve some pressure from our severe weather shelter. Don't look like a pack of do-nothings when real live people are in a bad way, need help, and Burien is in a position to give some. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Take what has been so graciously offered. Thank you.
Next is Kelsey Bandy.
Hi, Council. Thank you so much for this special meeting tonight. In public health, we have a concept we like to talk about called behavior change. I think whether or not you think it's an individual's fault that they're experiencing homelessness, we do want to see some behavior change. And when you're talking about behavior change, there's a concept called the FOG model, where you have willpower on one axis and obstacles on the other axis. And you can design policy interventions to focus on increasing people's willpower or relying on people's willpower, but we all know that willpower varies from individual to individual. It's weak, it's inconsistent. But when you remove obstacles from people, that's what gets you behavior change. And I'd like you to keep that in mind when you're choosing a site. I do hope you choose a site tonight. And I hope that you choose the one with the fewest obstacles, because I think we want people to make right decisions. We want them to go to mental health treatment. We want them to go to substance use treatment. And if they have to take 2 buses to get groceries, it's harder for them to make the decision to go to their appointments and get medication. It's harder for them to make the behavior change that we want to see. So you have an opportunity here to implement policy that will allow people to reduce their obstacles to the behavior that we want to see. That's fundamentally good policy making. I think you're all really smart and wonderful leaders, and I have faith that you will use tonight to make the right decision. Thank you.
Next is Kelsey Woods. Kelsey Woods.
Good evening. I want to make a couple things clear. I'm not the homeowner that the Boulevard Park site's on. I'm just a homeowner adjacent, or a property owner adjacent. Number 2, I felt like last meeting was pretty clear that everybody wanted to see something happen. They just were unclear which direction to go. I think a lot of hearts here have compassion. And I think one thing that resonated with me when I was on my way home was it's so blatantly apparent, unfortunately, that the Boulevard Park site is just not an acceptable site for this type of situation, most specifically because of the lack of services. I think that was brought up by this young lady over here and another gentleman who's over the other side. It's almost as if you're going to put, and when I say these people, again, I'm going to qualify it by not saying that I'm typecasting any sort of individual, but a person in need. It's almost like putting them in a pressure cooker without any services from either the Burien Corps or another adjoining service provider. And it's unfortunate for us that we're all the way down the road of this 6-month threshold, and we haven't been able to clearly identify the barrier to entry or to get into the site. My personal feeling is it should be extremely high. I know people that have been on unemployment, they've had to, submit their employment requests. I know that when I went in to get a car loan, I had to make sure my credit score. I mean, these are all like real world things that people have to adhere to get services. I don't understand why there would be any argument about having a high threshold, which if we can all agree on that, then let's agree on, and let me preface this by saying $1 million isn't going to go anywhere. And that tugs on people's heartstrings. Oh, my time is up. Thank you.
Next is Lindsay White.
Hi, Council. Thank you for having me here this evening. I come here speaking as a local Burien business owner who dealt with the somewhat chaotic existence of the homeless living outside of city council, as well as the new dog park. And I am also a Kennedy Catholic parent, as well as a previous attendee. I'm here speaking tonight, following what the previous speaker said. $1 million is not going to solve this problem. And if you do not have rules in place and barriers in place for a situation like this, putting it next to a high school is very irresponsible. I really applaud the Boulevard Park community for coming out tonight and letting you know how they feel about having this in their community where there are very few services. Kennedy Catholic's, the Seattle City Light Lot also does not have those services. It's a King County lot, which in the end we can say, yes, Burien City Council is condoning its placement there, but King County will have oversight of that lot. King County will be running it as they've run their other encampments. And while there's lots of roofing and boo-ha-haing in this chamber tonight, it's a failed system. And placing that next to a high school is not acceptable. Unfortunately, high school children have different means of dealing with things and whatnot. My current high school student dealt with several years of a sexual predator that targeted her in our business on 152nd. So the thought of that going in at her high school where she feels safe and comfortable is terrifying to me as a parent. And she will not be the only one. I'm not saying it will be a widespread problem, but until there can be complete control of this, something needs to happen. I'm done.
Next is Annie Phillips.
Hi, Council. I'm Annie Phillips. You know me. I campaigned for most of you. I've lived in Burien since 2005. I was thinking about this crazy meeting that we had last week, and for some reason, Dr. Seuss popped in my head. Do we want a village here? Do we want a village there? Really, do we want a village anywhere? So I'm wondering, really, I think this which location is best is almost kind of a smokescreen, because I feel like some of you really don't want a village in Burien and would vote against any location. So I suggest that rather than waste any more time, that you have a vote initially. Do we want a village in Burien? Will we accept the money? And then after that, talk about code of conduct and location. I hope you like my idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We do have, going back up on our list, we have Grace Stiller on Zoom. Grace, would you please unmute yourself at this time?
Thank you for circling back to me. I appreciate that. I had to update my Zoom account. So I'm in favor of a tiny home village with pallets managed by Lehigh especially. So I serve on a Citizens Advisory Council for one of their well-managed tiny home villages. And I can attest to the fact that they have an excellent program, and that you can definitely include a high barrier camp in Burien if that's what you desire, because they do have the management skills for that. I too do not want to see the homeless, the unhoused, the unfortunate, those in need go through a winter without housing when it can be done, especially with the $1 million, the tiny home villages or tiny homes offered free of charge. And I think, and I have expressed this before, I think the Toyota lot, because it is centrally located, is the best location. Secondary would be the city, Seattle City Light. But again, the Toyota lot comes with compensation for the Toyota company. They have been offered the parking garage 500 feet away, covered. Living in Burien for 12 years, I've often driven by their lot, and it has been very underused. And I don't understand where this threat of losing thousands of dollars and of income when the lot would just be 500 feet away and covered and much better. So council, I urge you to please accept this offer from the King County Housing Authority. Do what is right for Burien and the unhoused individuals. I appeal to your compassion. Please vote and accept this and decide tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, is Daniel Martin, who has raised a hand on Zoom. Daniel, would you please unmute yourself at this time?
Good evening, Council. Housing solves homelessness. Please find a way to get to a yes on this. The county's offered you $1 million for free to help us with the housing crisis, the fact that there are not homes for the people who live here. Please find a way to get to yes. That's all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next is KA on Zoom. Would you please unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. This is going to be relatively short. I'd just like to say that I appreciate all the work that you do. I know that it's very difficult. I've been watching the meetings and, you know, I feel for you and I feel for the community. Passion for the homeless, and I definitely want to see them get help, but I think that the housing first model is not maybe the best way to help them. They need to be ready to accept housing and be prepared for it. So I would like to see more services, more treatment for drug addiction and mental health, and then I'd like to see continued support after they get out of services so that they can be successful in rebuilding their lives. And I'd also like to say that, bringing more people into the community that have these serious problems and, putting them into potentially low barrier housing or low barrier encampment, not only is it going to cost money, which we don't have much of, but it's also going to be a drain on resources. Our resources for police, which we have very limited resources, and also simply food. Can our food banks handle the increased influx of people, new residents that are coming in from elsewhere that are going to maybe reduce the availability for other people who are currently here who need help? So, I just want people to consider what effect, doing this, whatever decision they make, is going to have on the community, and just be good stewards of the resources that we do have, and try and grow the resources by increasing tax revenue, and services for people who currently reside in Burien.
Thank you. Next is Rocco DeVito. Rocco, would you please unmute yourself at this time?
Hi, good evening, Council. I'm once again here to implore that we accept the $1 million from King County and build a tiny house village. Location-wise, I think realistically the best sites for the Toyota lot and the City Light lot, we're down just to the City Light and Boulevard Park. We've heard from numerous community members, from experts, that Boulevard Park is not the place to put that. This leaves the City Light location. I implore you all to accept this money. We've heard arguments that, we want to make sure we have all the money we need for perpetuity to run this facility, or that we wish that, the community had been more involved in getting this set up. But at the end of the day, that was council's responsibility, and neither of those things happened. I'm here, so as many other people, we're happy to have those conversations and to help move this forward and make this a more harmonious situation if we were to be engaged down the line. But at this point, we don't have any more options. We have $1 million on the table. We have an organization with a success record that will help us to run this facility effectively, that has a good success rate in getting people into housing afterwards. And just finally, we're going into the winter. This is the last opportunity to house our homeless people during the winter and save lives. I implore you to take this money and let's move forward. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next is Dana M on Zoom. Dana, would you please unmute yourself?
Hi, I will be very brief. I am asking that you please do not accept the money from King County. There is not it's going to run out and then what? If we decided we voted in DESC with full knowledge that that wasn't going to help the Burien homeless. We have no control over who gets to be placed in that facility. And I don't know why we'd set ourselves up for something that isn't necessarily going to help Burien get these people housed rather than King County sending people over. And here now we have both the pallet housing and people in tents. And then if you do vote this in, how any one of these people that have spoken can think that it's okay to put this next to a high school, any school, is beyond me. You can't put a weed shop within 1,000 feet or whatever the guideline is, but we can put an encampment that has every drug, fentanyl, sex trafficking, weapons, that can go right next to a high school. It's beyond me how anyone can think that that's an okay idea. So first I ask, please do not accept it. And secondly, please do not put it next to any school. Thank you.
And next, I'd like to ask if anyone else is interested in speaking to proceed to the podium and state your name for the record, or for those attending on Zoom, please raise your hand. Come on up if you're interested. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Stephanie Rogers, and I've raised my children here and I'm a homeowner. I have to tell you that I really would wish you not to accept this money to build tiny homes, which are not exactly homes. On Myers Way, there's Second Chance. I don't know if anybody has been there to see that there's trash all up and down. There's fires. Our trees are missing, broken down vehicles. It's not safe. There's people who leave the area and come through our neighborhoods. Everyone wants the homeless to be safe, absolutely. Also, homeowners and business owners, students, everybody needs to be safe. This is a community. Everybody has a heart, of course, okay? There should be no question about putting it next to a school, no way, and neither in a neighborhood. I myself, there's no services, there's no infrastructure for this tiny homes. There's what is closest to the transportation? The Toyota lot? This is the only viable possibility because it's closest to transportation, it's closest to precinct 4, which they need to be next to the law enforcement. It's closest to the hospitals and clinics, which they need. You cannot put it in a neighborhood or by a school. It should be nowhere really. Should open up instead the community centers, the senior centers, YMCA, let them come in at night, have hot water facilities and a place to get warm. Everyone's talking about how cold it is. I myself have been sleeping in my car in my driveway for months now, and I will tonight again. Why? Because the homeless have come to my home and burglarized, and the squatters came and they have destroyed my home.
Ask you to wrap it up, please.
Yes, I will. So if anybody wants to contact me, I'd be glad to tell you how unsafe it is to have these folks who need help in a neighborhood.
Next is Benjamin Schlemmer on Zoom. Benjamin, would you please unmute yourself?
Hello. Yeah, so I just want to say again and ask, was there no other room for other negotiations? If the $1 million doesn't work, was there like no monthly or quarterly budgeting that you could negotiate between the county if the $1 million was not reasonable? And even if there wasn't, how about say, these are our options. You can rent this area to the county and say, you're renting it, you want this here, you can put all the money you want here. Is that also not an option that we can do? Just be like, we do some city oversight, set the guidelines, and they can do what they want. There seems like there are so many different options for negotiations that just didn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone else is interested in sharing a comment, please proceed to the podium now and state your name for the record or raise your hand on Zoom at this time.
Hello, I'm a resident at the Ambom camp. And I just want to urge you to please accept the money, because we are not these horrible people that everyone is making us out to be. These stories that people hear and put on the blogs and everything else, they're not true. We're just people that are going through a hard time and, didn't have family or didn't have resources to help us stay in where we were. And sorry, I'm nervous. Please accept the money, because it's a really good thing. And it's a good start to, it would help a lot of people get on the right track, because a lot of us, that's what we need, is just that, a place to live, roof over our head, a safe place, just to get our life going back again. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else interested in sharing a comment at this time? If you are, please proceed to the podium or raise your hand on Zoom.
Good evening, August Hahn, Burien resident. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I have to address some of the lies that have been spoken of tonight and from the members of the audience. Housing First does work. Houston, Texas committed all in on Housing First, and they have managed to reduce homelessness by 60% by committing government money. Sorry, Councilmember Mora, but it does take money to do this, and money does not grow on trees. For those who say the homeless should never be here or simply should leave, when the 9-point earthquake, which is long forecast and long overdue, hits, it's going to turn this city into rubble, and we are all going to be homeless. And those who have been yelling so loudly that the homeless should leave are probably going to be the ones yelling loudly, government should help them first. There is the stench you smell is not the aroma of Tacoma. It's the stench of hypocrisy in this town regarding the homeless. You on the city council have the opportunity to put some fresh air into this and stop punishing people by simply being poor. And everyone else apparently is so rich. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council members. I was also not going to speak tonight, as I usually don't, but I have just this feeling that there's a lot of confusion in this matter, very little information to make an educated decision, and more questions than answers, leaving us many of us guessing. And listening to all these comments, I was thinking this offer was made to the city. And I believe you as my representatives are supposed to do the due diligence to research this topic, go visit those villages and see how they work, what works best, and come back to us and give us the information, because this feels like a competition here. Who is going to make the best argument, pro or contra? I believe those good people, but I have not witnessed it, and I am supposed to take their argument as granted. I think if it comes from my representatives who do the due diligence and who really come and consider both of the arguments, pro and cons, then we as the citizens can make the decision. But this is just, I feel like a show that is leaving us all kind of, coming up here and struggle. I'm also amazed that, so many people who say that they are totally pro, but not in my backyard, like Beverly Boulevard Park. You know how long distance it is from the lot from behind Kennedy to go to even Fred Meyer or to any public transportation? I would encourage you to go and walk it. It's not either close to any of those. But this is not the topic. I think this should all be considered in some report, in some study done. And once we do it, and we do it right, you will get millions of dollars offered from many state and federal agencies, because if we figured out how it works, the money is out there anytime.
Ma'am, what is your name? Ma'am, what's your name? And we have time for one more comment. Any last comments, either in person or on Zoom? I'll ask one last time. Is anyone else interested in sharing a comment? Madam Mayor, I do not believe anyone else is interested at this time.
Thank you. So public comment closed or ended at 8 p.m. And so moving on to our special meeting agenda, Code of Conduct and Services and location for potential Pallet Village, Boulevard Park, and Seattle City Lights. And so I'll turn this over to Adolfo Bailon to share some information that wasn't presented previously.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. The material in your packet is, for the most part, unchanged from meeting from last week. We can place matrix on the screen so Council can view it. The locations that Council had previously discussed, not necessarily considered as options, but discussed, was the location in Boulevard Park, the Seattle City Light lot, and the city lot owned by the city. In this matrix, you have information that includes potential proximity to transportation, different access to bus lines, as well as proximity to Transform Burien, which is one of the locations within the city that provides services. We have proximity to food source, an approximate walking time and or time through public transportation. The zone in which the location is located, by zone, I mean airport noise reduction zone. The lot availability, we have listed as a private lot available to the city, owned by City of Seattle, Seattle City Light. And then also information on the city lot, and at least one motion that had been made previously of at least several the council has made in the past several weeks. And then additional information that had been made available through one, the King County Housing Authority website that currently remains unchanged. The information from the City of Seattle through more recent communications through email at the instruction from council. And then also additional information from the current occupants of the lot owned by the city. The next slide that we have available to share with council is the airport noise reduction zone. These are the zones that the city's building department and community development department use to establish construction codes in the different areas of the city. As you can see that there are three particular zones. Zone 1 is the area closest to the airport, closest to the airport runways, which we can see in the large blue box. The northernmost location in the yellow circle is the Boulevard Park Library lot, or the Boulevard Park Library. The triangle in yellow is the Seattle City Light lot on South 136th Street. The next item in yellow closest to the runways is the city lot. and that is adjacent to the existing Oasis Home Church lot, currently open on 150th Street. And that is the information that we had to share, unless council had any specific questions related to information in the matrix.
Questions or comments for the city manager? Did you raise your hand, Councilmember Moore? Anyone else have a comment or questions for the city manager? Okay. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Aragon. Thank you, City Manager, for that report. I do have a motion to make, if we do not have any deliberation or questions that people would like to go over. I would like to entertain any discussion people had prior, but seeing none, I guess I will move forward with this and we can take it from there. I move to establish temporary emergency housing at the Seattle City Light property and to direct the city manager to inform the King County Regional Homelessness Authority of the services to be required, which include at a minimum, security and a community liaison. In addition, pallet shelter occupants and visitors must abide by a code of conduct to include, at a minimum, no illegal drug use, alcohol use, or possession of firearms on site or in the surrounding neighborhood, and no registered sex offenders permitted. The pallet shelter facility may operate for 1 year. The city manager will negotiate for a goal of designating 90% of occupancy to be people who are homeless in Burien.
Do you have a second?
Seconded.
Okay. We can get that on the screen. We have the motion. Okay. Councilmember Moore, do you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, please. This motion is a compromise. It incorporates details that I think will help us address a lot of concerns we've heard. This motion incorporates feedback from professionals in the homeless service field, community members, and my fellow council members. I personally don't feel that this is necessarily ideal, but in the spirit of compromising to find something that we can move forward with, I am willing to accept these terms. I believe there's no perfect solution to homelessness, and I don't believe there's any perfect solution to the homelessness crisis here in Burien right now. But I do believe this proposal offers a significant step forward. Taking this step is not the end of our journey, not at all, but rather the beginning. This journey will require more work. It will require ongoing community engagement, feedback, and we may need to make adjustments along the way. But this puts us on the right path, and we have community partners willing to help us in taking this on. We have service providers, nonprofits, volunteers, and people across the community. I actually even spoke with the principal of Kennedy Catholic High earlier, and one way or another, they do remain committed to helping us engage with the community, no matter what happens. There's a lot of deliberation that has gone into this, and this proposal is crafted with intent. There's a lot of information I can provide to speak to the details of this motion, the reasons behind each and every aspect, and I'm happy to do so. I would like to hear what others have to say, though, hear any questions people may have, and know if there are any particular aspects that need to be clarified. I am excited at the prospect of being able to work together on this and hopeful that we will come to a solution we all find acceptable.
Any questions or comments? I see some members reading the motion, so I'm just going to give you a few moments to do that. Councilmember Sarah.
I had a question about what a community liaison is. I know that I've heard people from Lehigh talk about community advisory bodies of some sort in which nearby members of the community are able to give input on observations? Is that what that would be, or just a little more information on that?
So in my experience in looking at operations models from a variety of providers, the general sense of what a community liaison would be is somebody who's a point person that can address direct ongoing engagement with the community, help coordinate listening sessions, help coordinate a community advisory committee, help coordinate ongoing conversations with the city. I think that most organizations have people in this role and their duties may vary, but this is establishing that there will be somebody that maintains ongoing connection to the community as a whole and the specific neighborhood and the city so that we can work in partnership with whatever the operator is.
And I'm just going to add that I would hope that it's so that folks don't have to come to city council to ask questions or come and not be sure about what's going on, and they can get regular updates that way. Other comments or questions?
Mayor, if we may, just for clarification from staff, we certainly don't feel any one way or another about the motion, but it would be helpful if council can provide us with some guidance in terms of the sentence, pallet shelter facility may operate for 1 year. Is it possible to consider for up to 1 year or until money runs out, or for council to direct us for where to locate this money within our budget?
Well, I'll just respond when I see may, that's permissive. And it shows that you can be less, which is possible with the funding that you have. Deputy Mayor.
I would just make a motion to include the city manager's amendment addition to say pallet shelter may operate for 1 year. Adolfo, what was your language?
We had a suggestion of for up to 1 year.
Or didn't you have?
Or until money runs out. Or the third option is just to identify where within the budget we should pull money from.
Okay. Then so I'll make an amendment to say the pallet shelter facility may operate for up to 1 year.
You have a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded by Councilmember Garcia. Do you need to speak further on your motion? Okay, so we do have an amendment on the table. So all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Okay, so I have Councilmember Garcia, Deputy Mayor Schilling, Councilmember Mata, and Councilmember Sarah, and I'll vote yes also. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yays. Any nays? Councilmember Moore, and 2 nays.
Councilmember Sydney Moore and Councilmember Mora.
Yes, and Deputy Mayor?
I just have a question for the city manager and the city attorney. Is there anything else within this language that you think would need to have any kind of amendment to meet the requirements that KCRHA would require, or that the county would require, or that we would require under our own codes? And
Just from the initial glance about services provided, it seems to meet the communication that we've received from the Homelessness Authority. They have told us that the sponsor organization has the ability to establish some boundaries. This certainly does seem to meet the information shared by the Regional Homelessness Authority with the city. In terms of the location itself, I'll certainly let the city manager speak to it, or the city attorney speak to it, but this seems to fit the requirements set by the Regional Homelessness Authority.
Any other questions or comments?
Another question.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
Can you walk us through the next steps? If this were to pass, what would the immediate next steps be?
First steps would be for me tonight to send notice to the Regional Homelessness Authority and then also the County Executive's Office to let them know of the motion that passed tonight. Let them know that the city met or could potentially meet the deadline set by the King County Executive's Office. At that point, we would then work with the Regional Homelessness Authority and the King County Executive's Office on next steps. First goal is to make sure that they are aware that council potentially met the deadline. Next step is to start working toward an RFP of some kind through the Regional Homelessness Authority externally. Internally, I would have to work with the Community Development Department to ensure that the Planning Commission starts to work on making this type of project permittable within the city. Currently, it's not allowed, but it is a process that we could alter within the internal process. So it's, again, two-pronged approach, working externally with our partners with the Regional Homelessness Authority and the county to let them know that we're prepared, potentially prepared for next steps. And then internally is working with community development to make sure that the Planning Commission sets within their timelines a potential plan for making this possible.
Other comments? Deputy Mayor? I do, but go ahead. Well, I think that first of all, I really appreciate that there's been an effort to be really clear about what the city will provide. So, and people have said, hey, it's been taking 6 months, what's taking you so long? But honestly, through that time, I think there's been a lot of lessons learned, right? So while all of you all, now beyond those who are in this chamber tonight, but those who came over a time, picks up themes about security, right? Making sure that everybody's safe. And I know from hearing people who do work with many of those that are unhoused, they also are subject to really unsafe conditions. Like, for example, drug trafficking. They're out there and they're vulnerable, okay? And Deputy Mayor and I went to the National League of Cities, and this is a national phenomenon, right? Which brings me to the other piece that we can't get there alone, but it is a regional issue. Someone brought up, Seattle's dynamics definitely affect us. Whatever they do will affect us. And they're the big example, but we also have neighboring cities and places that struggle with the same thing. And there is still no coordinated effort regionally as to how are we all going to manage this. And so I'm hoping with the next council that there will be more of that. And so we're forced to really be just hyper-focused on Burien because that's where we have our control, right? Just a few concerns. There's really good things to this, again, especially the use of substances, firearms, and talking about the surrounding neighborhood. But it's not the piece of property that I think we have the most control of. I think there's other properties, the other one that was up for discussion that because of the plans for that property, that there is definitively an end date for a pilot project, because I think that we do need to try out something like this and put parameters and see again what we learn from it. I thought it was really important that those parameters were made from comments that we received at chambers weekly. And so I do think that the homelessness issue is really complex and that it has evolved since I started as a city council member 4 years ago. So while Housing First has really deep roots, those complicated factors that happen over time, like I do really think that the fentanyl epidemic, I was comfortable not associating drug use with homelessness when I started, but now because like I said, people can be victimized or people are in really desperate situations and you can't blame them for falling into a health issue like that, but that has to be taken into consideration. So Housing First, I think, probably needs to be tweaked and is a bit simplistic right now. And we need to think about how not only the upstream, so I'm glad this council invested in apprenticeship education. We have ARPA funds going into homelessness. we've been struggling over the last few months about how do we manage homelessness in the city? And this is one part of that. And so the next iteration is going to be, how are we going to get people either into stable housing or the help they need, either it's mental health or substance use disorder. So there's still a lot to go, but I think that this shows that the council has come really far in terms of talking to each other and trying to cobble something that we've heard from the community, and I think that we can all live with right now for this limited time frame of $1 million. Because I think about the median home price in the city of Burien, I think is about 800,000, right? And one home is really built for like 4 people, and here we are trying to use these limited resources to take care of 40 to 70 people. But we'll do the best that we can with it. So that's my comment. Councilmember Sarah.
Yeah, I have 2 comments. One is that this is a limited time situation, and I don't know if this is a motion I need to make or if it's a request or what it is, but I think the council will need to hear updates on this fairly frequently, and particularly as we reach the end of that money/time that we will need to start discussing, the situation. What have we, as Mayor Aragon said, what have we learned in the course of that time? And how do we apply that? And what actions will we need to take as that time runs out? I volunteer at 2 other homeless organizations within Burien, and have seen them learn. Although this is a regional issue, solutions are also hyper-local, and I've seen them learn how to be in the city that they're in and with the communities that they're in. And I believe that learning from experience involves 2 things. It involves experience, but also a deliberate intention to learn, and I'd like us to bring that into this.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Mata.
I'd like to say a couple words on this. I think it has been a tough 6 months. I think that this is the beginning, because there's still negotiation with the city of Seattle, with King County Regional Housing Authority, with Lehigh, to figure out what is the contractual language that we're going to be guided under. 1, 2, what is the budget? For instance, for the liaison, does that come out of the $1 million? My other question would be for the infrastructure, when we have to run water, sewer. I don't think it'll be an issue, because obviously we have outhouses, but we will have to run water and electricity. So the question is, would that be out of the $1 million? And then the services, right? I do believe that services are going to be great. Now, I think that people should have a second chance in society. When we've said in Burien, you can't have encampment anywhere unless you have a shelter. We provide a shelter now. So that will be one thing that we'll be able to help with. On top of that, being able to get people with services to get Social Security cards, identification cards to get back to work, figuring out what kind of job searches we could do, what kind of training programs we can have. I'm ready to give this a try. I remember when Mary's Place was here, I had a lot of residents who were upset, saying that we were going to have what has been described in several meetings. I think they've been great neighbors. DESC, I voted for it, and I said, look, I'll hold them responsible to be good neighbors. And I believe that they are going to be good neighbors. I don't believe this issue that comes with unhoused people is something that is going to go away. But I do believe that it's a start where we can have somebody that has come out of rehab is going to take a second chance at life. But it's very clear here in Burien, we're a community that cares for people. We're a community that wants to make sure we get back on track. But we're also not going to tolerate, drug dealing, gang activities, open drug use, sleeping where you want to sleep. I think we have a social obligation, a social contract. I know I do. That's what I've taught my family, is that, we also have to be able to learn how to give and participate in our civic engagement and civic duties. Obviously I know that in this community, this new council that's coming up in January, and myself and It's how do we build the trust back with the community? Because I still see the fear that's out there on whether this is going to work or not. I have been to a couple of like Nicholsville. I've heard that it's not something that some people would want in their community. But I walked that facility. I hung out in that facility a couple times to figure out, okay, what is the issue, especially at lunchtime. Well, Ivers is right across the street, and you have a brand new multi-billion-dollar or multi-million-dollar building being built. There's McLennan's there that operates their business, and so I'm really seeing what individuals said. Now, I believe that we still have to deal with the problem that it's not really the homeless people that is the fearful people in our streets. It's the reality is people suffering again from mental health and drug addiction. I think that that's going to be the main issue. This encampment, or this village is going to be housing people. We're still going to have people on the streets who suffer from these kind of illnesses. And number one, we are a regional hospital, and so I do believe that at least someone that's coming out of the hospital have a place to be able to get a second chance if they want. But if you want to continue to run the streets and cause hate and discontent, this is not the city for you. We're all hardworking people. We work very hard every day. We wake up. Some of us work 2-3 jobs to be able to pay our bills, and so we want to make sure that the streets are safe for our children. And I think it is a one step forward to be able to work with our neighboring city, the city of Seattle. I look forward to working with that new council as well. And I think that I would have said, what other areas would we be able to have this facility? And I don't know if there is one. I don't think there's anybody that wants a facility in their backyard, but I think that this one, it's pretty clear. And I want to thank Councilmember Moore. I know what her position is on a lot of things, and this is one that I know was hard to make, and I want to thank you, because it is a compromise. It's a compromise where we can figure out how can we be part of the regional solution, and not be the individual that says not in my backyard without giving it a try. Here's a place where it's really described within the ordinance of who's going to be allowed and who's not going to be allowed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. There's two things I'd like to flesh out a little bit in this that we can maybe get a little more specific on. The first is the community liaison language. I think I'd like to add something to make it clear that that would be somebody from the city of Burien or KCRHA. I think that's just the community liaison. I think it's a little bit broad. So maybe if we're able to think about that a little bit more, I think that would make sense to have someone be specifically from either the city of Burien or KCRHA, who is an employee. Like, for example, like I would think from the city of Burien would be our human services manager. Or potentially whoever would be from KCRHA would be someone who is directly on the project. But I think it makes a little bit of sense to clarify that a little bit, because right now just "and a community liaison" is kind of broad.
Are you proposing a motion?
I'm going to, but I'm just letting everybody know where my head's at. So I think I'd like to make an amendment. I think this makes sense to keep it someone who's from the city government, because they know the city and they know the community and they know Kennedy, and they know the area. So I would like to make an amendment to add at a minimum security and a city of Burien community liaison.
Okay. Been motioned and seconded to
Second the
amend the
motion.
motion so that the community liaison is from the city of Burien. So, Councilmember Sarah.
I really like the direction of that. I just want to make sure that our staff are able to comprise that within the scope of work they already have.
City manager.
I think this is something that we could work to make happen internally with the staff that we have. I appreciate Councilmember Sarah, your consideration of our staff's full of work, but in staff's interest in working with council and making this happen, we can certainly work something out. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll rely on staff. If there's something that looks operationally precarious, just let us know. Remember, we're here for policy, so let's try to avoid operations here.
And just, I'd like to say just one thing about the community, a community liaison and a path moving forward. I think it's incumbent on, no matter who that would be, or if it's the city manager or whoever within the planning department, to do outreach as soon as possible to that neighborhood. That neighborhood didn't have the same kind of attention that Boulevard Park did. And didn't have the same outreach that Boulevard Park did. So I think there should be equal outreach to that community, as well as the surrounding businesses in Kennedy. So that's my first added amendment, City of Burien Community Liaison.
Okay. So let's see, any other comments or questions about this amendment? So all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Okay. Any nays? Okay, so there are 5 yays and Councilmember Mora votes nay, the only nay, 6 to 1. Passes. Other. Councilmember Mora.
I have another amendment to add to that. After, where is it? And no registered sex offenders permitted, if we could strike out and then change that period to a comma from permitted and have it say, no one under the influence of illegal drugs or alcohol will be permitted in the village at any time, and then say, the pallet shelter facility may operate for up to 1 year. No one under the influence of illegal drugs and or alcohol will be permitted in the village at any time.
Sorry, can you repeat that last part?
Or alcohol will be permitted in the village at any time. And that's just to ensure that the village stays clean and sober.
I'll second that.
Do you want to say anything more about your motion? Okay, so all those oh, go ahead, Councilmember Moore.
So I want to say I appreciate the intent here. I do want to note that there are limitations on what can be included in the RFP, just because they're, the RFP is intended to be kind of broad in scope. We have implemented a number of restrictions that actually go beyond what the RFP process typically is. I also want to be mindful of levels of enforcement, because having rules on the books that don't have solid enforcement mechanisms are difficult. And it sets up operators to have struggle. Where we can clearly define, you can't be using anything like this or have any of this in the area, and where we can clearly define, no possession of firearms, etc. The content of somebody's body is much more difficult to determine. And there will be codes of conduct regardless of who runs this place. It is a requirement in the RFP process that any operators applying for funding like this submit codes of conduct. And so regardless of what model you're looking at, codes of conduct are always going to incorporate exclusion for disruptive behavior, nuisance behavior, anything problematic. So if somebody behaves in a way that is somehow disruptive, that's going to be incorporated, whether it's related to being under the influence or related to any number of other factors. I feel like this creates a situation that is difficult. And I would ask that we not make this amendment, because we have already made it clear where we stand, and operators are going to have to figure out how to abide by the restrictions we have now. This is a difficult ask for enforcement. Not that the intent will not be enforced, just that the language is tricky. And I think we have very solid language as is. Thank you.
So city manager, do you see this amendment putting any barriers against the RFP going out?
Respectfully, Mayor, I think this is a decision for council to make. I think the information we received from the Regional Homelessness Authority states that they have leeway on what can and cannot, but they didn't give us specific red line items. So if council wanted to have this as part of the motion, I could relay it to them and they could be as close to their process as possible, but that's as close as an answer as I can share with you, Mayor and Council.
Okay. Councilmember Mora?
I just have something for the city clerk, to remove the word "and" no registered, but the word "and" before no registered. Yeah, to remove it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions then on this amendment? Well, I think it's repetitive, but I don't think it harms what was already there. So, you know, sometimes when things are drafted, you just have some extra words, but I don't see anything contradicting or. So all those in favor of this amendment, please raise your hand or say aye. Okay, so that's Deputy Mayor, myself, Councilmember Mata, Councilmember Mora votes yes. All those voting no, Councilmember Garcia, Councilmember Moore, and Councilmember Sarah. Okay, so the amendment passes 4 votes to 3. Okay. Deputy Mayor.
There's one other area that I think we should touch on a little bit is this last sentence. The city manager, oh, they're good. I'll let you finish that first. The city manager will negotiate for a goal of designated 90% of occupancy to be people who are homeless in Burien. So just that last section, homeless in Burien, I think we should define that a little bit more. We did that with DESC. And I think it's a good for 30% with DESC, and I think that's a good thing to continue here. I think we should discuss a little bit, we should flesh out what we're defining as homeless in Burien. Is that, I think for the purposes of this, especially if it's operating for up to 1 year, I think my head's at if it should be someone who would be contacted by our human services department, people who are in communication and in our system with our human services department. I think that would make sense. So that there's that priority. So I think I'll make an amendment to say, or homeless in Burien as defined by let's see, let me think. As defined by having been contacted by our human services department. And we can discuss this and flesh it out to see if council wants to do that, but
What's the goal of this?
well, the goal of this is to ensure that the folks who we're defining quote unquote homeless in Burien, because if you're just someone, we have to know that you've requested services and that you're in line, similar to how coordinated entry works at the county level. Councilmember Mora has her hands up.
Before I second this, I think it would be our outreach, which is lead and reach, who would make that contact with the homeless and not necessarily our human services division, although they also could. Just,
Or maybe you should have a definition to be determined. I mean, you have to define it, right? So I'm going to back up a little bit. The point of this sentence, the city manager will negotiate for a goal of designating 90% of occupancy to be people who are homeless in Burien. So this addresses the possibility that because this is not Burien property, that Seattle can say there's space for Seattle folks. And we wanted to ensure that 90% of those who are allowed to occupy the space are identified as people in Burien. So I appreciate that there is a need to define because you want to make sure they're here. So a suggestion is, and we might have to take a break for this, a suggestion is to create that definition because having talked to like HUD, which is the federal, that it is really difficult to define who lives somewhere in a certain geographic area because they just might have to migrate. So, I mean, that's another tactic is that the city manager can make that definition.
Do we
So-
want to take a few minutes for the
Yeah.
city manager and city
When-
attorney to?
When did you do that?
Okay, so I motion for
Okay, 5 minute.
5 minutes.
Recess to work out amendment language. So we'll reconvene at 8:45. Yes, I'm sorry. I heard. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna. Okay, council, let's reconvene, please. Okay. I'm checking with staff. Do you need a few more minutes or do you have what you need?
If we could have just one moment.
Okay, thank you. So.
That makes sense. It's gonna have that.
We'll be fine. Do you have what you need?
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so let's reconvene, please. It's 8:48. Sorry for the delay. And we have so let's pick up from where we were. So Deputy Mayor Schilling.
Yeah,
you have an
so
amendment.
the language, city clerk, if we're able to put that up, please. Thank you. Okay, so as defined by coordinated entry based on contracted and staff resources currently used in the city of Burien. Oh. There we go.
Do you have a second?
I
I'll
don't know.
second that motion.
Oh, Jimmy.
Okay, okay. Questions or do you want to speak to your motion?
No, I've spoken to it enough.
Questions? Councilmember Sarah.
Is coordinated entry the process King County uses, and would we be applying it to Burien specific?
Yeah, so after speaking with the city manager, that is the process that will be used and is being used for DESE. And that's what's used with KCRHA and housing within the King County system.
This is a question for Colleen.
Or was Colleen
Colleen, did you want to
available?
add to that, please?
Hi, Colleen.
Yes.
She's over there.
Sounded like a staff question.
Well, where's she gonna go?
She can go up to the lectern.
Oh, yeah.
So I think the question is,
Mic's not working well. Do you want to just go to the lectern though? It's a better mic. Yes, I can barely hear that one. Okay, I think it has.
I'll try to check. I'll turn this off.
thank you, Mayor. So I think what you're wanting to mirror is the advisory work that's happening with DESC to get to the 30% set aside, correct?
To essentially reflect the process that we established for that.
Yes.
To meet this requirement that we're putting in here.
And that process sits outside of coordinated entry, just so you know. So I would keep coordinated entry then out of
Okay.
this language.
Would you have a recommendation to put in place besides that then?
I would just, I think where Councilmember Mora was going around working with outreach, we are convening meetings with outreach. Outreach will pitch the names of folks that are appropriate to the DESC project, that same process could occur with this opportunity as well.
Okay. So can I run something by you then?
Absolutely.
Would it make sense based off that then to reflect this by saying as defined by outreach and contact process currently being used by the city of Burien, period?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we'll convene those meetings with outreach providers and folks will mimic that process that DESC is using. And people will pitch the folks that they've built relationships with and that have been here over time.
Great.
And to be recommended for this site.
Great. Thank you, Colleen.
You're welcome.
And you'd want to remove this first
Yeah,
sentence.
remove the first and remove the
This
first.
is your amendment, okay.
Could I make a friendly suggestion?
Are you okay with that, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah.
Could we remove the word currently in case we contract new outreach organizations or anything like that in the
Fine with that.
future? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so remove currently. Okay, there we go.
I continue to second the motion that is
Okay,
written on the screen.
all right.
Thank you, Councilmember Mata.
Okay, have you said, would you like to say more?
No.
Okay, so all those in favor of this amendment, and this will be at the very end, my understanding?
Yeah, at the very end.
Okay. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand or say aye. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you for working with this amendment with staff. Other amendments? Councilmember Mora.
Where it says for up to 1 year, if we could add or when King County's offer of 1 million runs out, whichever comes first.
Is there a second?
Whichever comes first.
And that would go where?
It would go where it says the pallet shelter facility may operate for up to 1 year or for when King County's offer runs out. So it'd be right after 1 year.
Is there a second?
I think this is similar to what Adolfo was requesting us.
Well, are you seconding this?
Oh, yeah, I'll second this.
Do you want to speak to, okay, you want to speak to your motion, Councilmember Mora? Councilmember Mata?
I just got a clarifying question. So when the King County million runs out, whichever comes first. So since this is not just a Burien, this is not actually a Burien property, the city of Seattle. So the city of Seattle decided that they were gonna, if it's within the 1 year and they were gonna allocate resources, then would this added language not allow that to happen? Or any private funder?
Well, hold on one second. So, city manager, do you have an opinion for Councilmember Mata's question, which sounds like this is Seattle City Light property. They may want to add additional funds so that goes up to a year. So would this amendment limit that ability? Because 1 million may run out before 1 year.
We have a minute, Mayor.
Sure.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
i-
go ahead.
if we could request that Councilmember Mata repeat his question.
Sure. Go ahead, Councilmember Mata.
So the question here says, the pallet shelter facility may operate for up to 1 year, or when King County offer of 1 million runs out, whichever comes first. So my question is, if that means that the city of Seattle, let's say the $1 million ends in 6 months or 8 months, but the city of Seattle wanted to continue to fund that up to 1 year, does that mean that they would not be able to do that? Because in this language, it says that it's King County's money off, or even if it was a private donor.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Mata. Thank you, Mayor. Oh, one more minute, please. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council, for the patience. We wanted to make sure that we presented you all with the best information that we have available. To answer Councilmember Mata's question directly, this language would, specifically just to this language in this instance, the language would prevent the city of Seattle from moving forward beyond the $1 million for this specific amount of money. However, if the city chose to move forward and our zoning code, once changed to allow this type of project to move forward, allowed for, say, a temporary use permit or some form of permitting, the city of Seattle may use other avenues through our permitting process to potentially continue this project. But So we wanted to make sure that we answered the question and didn't say this language would prevent this project from moving beyond $1 million. Because that would not be the full picture for council to consider. So yes, this language would prevent the city of Seattle or anyone else from moving beyond the $1 million. However, there could be other avenues that could be taken to extend the life of a project.
My follow-up question would that be that it would still have to come to the council when we're reaching this, and the council that's would be sworn in January could make that decision at the time, correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry, we couldn't understand the question,
So,
Councilmember
so the
Mata.
question is, so if this does end, so let's say the $1 million ends in 4 months or 5 months or 6 months, it would still have to come to the council. So if there is a private donor, or if the city of Seattle wants to continue to fund it, or King County wants to continue to fund it for the 1 year, then it would come back to the new council. It'll be sworn in January. It still have to come to the council, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Other questions, Councilmember Moore?
I just wanted to note that I do appreciate Councilmember Mata's question regarding how the allocation of funds is, and there is a stipulation of up to 1 year here, but when you add in this language, as we were told, it does create kind of a sticky situation. And personally, I would really like it if whatever organization applies or gets this does contribute their own funding and does look for additional funding, because $1 million may be a bare minimum, but having extra resources, having extra service providers that they can pay extra funding for, that sort of thing, I think is great. And so I'm gonna be a no vote on this. And I think that we do have a limit already established, and I think that the budgeting of nonprofit organizations, when you're trying to identify select pools of funding and timelines in this regard, becomes difficult. So I wouldn't want to try and task a nonprofit with trying to figure out how to do that. And I would welcome additional funding to make this as successful and well supported as possible.
Other questions and comments? Okay, so we have a motion on the table for an amendment that you see on the screen by Councilmember Moore and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. So all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Councilmember Mora and Councilmember Mata. So, and Deputy Mayor Schilling. So all those in favor voting no. Councilmember Garcia, Councilmember Moore, Councilmember Sarah, and myself. Okay. Other amendments? Okay. So are we ready to vote on the underlying motion or the main motion? Okay. Okay, are you sure? Yeah. Okay, so we have an amended motion. So on the table is a motion. So we'll need to pass the motion as amended, made by Councilmember Moore and seconded by Councilmember Garcia. So all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Councilmember Garcia, Councilmember Sydney Moore, Councilmember Sarah, and Councilmember Mata. Okay. So all those voting no, Deputy Mayor, myself, and Councilmember Mora. Okay, so the motion passes 4 votes to 3. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for your work. Deputy Mayor?
I'd like to make a motion added onto this to direct the city manager to begin outreach to that neighborhood and schools nearby immediately.
Second.
And would you like to say anything more about your motion?
Yeah, I've already said this a little bit, but that community hasn't had the same attention as other communities have had. And folks need to be brought into the discussion and brought into what's going on.
Okay. Any other comments? So all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. So Councilmember Garcia, Councilmember Bora, Deputy Mayor, myself, Councilmember Sarah, Councilmember Mora. All those voting no. Okay, Councilmember Mata, how do you vote? Okay, so the motion passes.
I voted yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Anything else? Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. I move to direct the city manager to work with staff to bring back language to create exemptions from use restrictions in zoning code for emergency housing or shelter, including tiny homes and pallet shelters.
Second.
Thank you. And I'll speak to this very briefly. We've already heard that there are specific zoning code restrictions that would need to be changed in order to move forward with this project. This is just something that gets the ball rolling and makes it clear to everyone that we are taking the appropriate steps to address that. Things like the airport noise reduction regulations, for example, are one of the things that need to be fixed. So this gets us moving ahead in a timely fashion so that we can be proactive.
Okay. Go ahead.
And I'll just say I'm supporting it because
Do you want to second it?
I've already seconded it.
Okay.
In the past, we voted in favor of expanding shelter permits and expediting those. And I think one issue and concern with communities everywhere is that we don't have enough zoning and code language and permitting language around getting buildings, areas, land up and running fast enough. So it's something that we could even bring into the new council to discuss for zoning and land use changes to make it more permanent. And make it so that nonprofits and private properties, but also governments can get something going faster. So.
Okay, other comments or questions on the motion? Okay, so we have a motion on the table. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. All those voting no. Councilmember Mata, how do you vote? Are you abstaining?
Aye.
Okay, so the motion passes 6-1 with Councilmember Mora voting no. Okay. So we are at the end of our agenda. So if there are no objections, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, staff.